Our next speaker is the executive director of OIDEL. Ignasi Grau Callizo is the general director of OIDEL, an international organization in Switzerland. He holds a bachelor's in law and business administration, a master's degree in political science, has been in charge of the Freedom of Education Index published by OIDEL, and is the coordinator of the NGO platform on the right to education at the United Nations. Ignasi, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Michael. It's a really an honor to be today with you on this Policymakers Forum, and a pleasure also to learn from all of you. Well, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to make some reflections on the evolution of the acknowledgement of parents in the political sphere and how the coronavirus has affected that. In 1963, I think Clark Kerr, who was at the time the Berkeley University president, said in a conference that what the rail did in the second half of the last century and the automobile did during the first half of the this century could be done in the second half of the century by the knowledge industry, that is education. Yes, the 70s were a transforming period for the US educational system on a quantitative way, and the US and the United States government doubled the educational budget. The number of teachers passed from 1 million to 2-3 million. And in addition, the number of people going into higher education was higher than ever before. And even President Johnson at the time said the answer of all national problems come to one single word: education. This revolution later took place in Europe, and we can talk about mainly a quantitative revolution because we are talking about increasing numbers of people acceding to education. And this at the end took form in strengthening a new middle class, enabling an empowerment for many citizens around the Western world. Nevertheless, not everything was great for this revolution. The school's performance declined during that time, and education did not bring the expected social stability. Now again, in the 21st century, we are hearing these new revolutions in education. We are hearing about new technologies. We are hearing about the multiple intelligence paradigm of Garner, the new neuroscientific discoveries such as the factor. And we are informed on this time on a new revolution, a qualitative educational revolution with the same expectations as the 70s, 60s revolutions. Why am I talking so much about revolutions? Well, the changes offered by these two revolutions are good and offer the possibility for a better realization of the right to education. Nevertheless, the idea of revolution always entails a danger, which risk might present these kind of revolutions. Revolutions have the tendency of conceiving the new disruptive elements as a magic wand that will change education for good. And therefore, the promoters of this revolution have the tendency to banish or underrate all the previous structures. And this is the institution that has been more vilified during this process usually have been parents and families. This does not mean that these education innovations or these policies are not good or are in contraposition with families. It just means that families, little by little, especially in the international sphere, have been less recognized. In my field, for instance, in the United Nations, we have not seen any reference to family in any of the last 5 years resolutions on the right to education. And furthermore, very little substance concerning families is to be found in UNESCO documents in the last years. But in this context, coronavirus popped, and I think something is changing. Coronavirus has supposed a major breakdown of the educational systems around the world. This crisis has revealed the strengths and flaws of the systems. Just as an example, we are going to observe for real the possibilities of distance learning or the potential of technologies in education, I think, with this crisis. But a few days back, Andreas Schleicher, Director for Education and Skills at the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OCDE, pointed that this is not the moment to push for new ideas, but identify what is working to expand its implementation. And what is it working in this context? In this context where, according to UNESCO, more than 90% of children have been out of school, parents have emerged as the main support for the learning of children. I think no one can deny that, and we are seeing parents emerging from this crisis. We can observe parents that are in the center of the educational chessboard after many years. And in this regard, many strategies and government assistance package to overcome this crisis that are targeting parents, even governments who haven't been comfortable and recognizing the role of parents. Also at the international level, I can say I'm quite surprised that we have observed that the reference of parents in educational international documents has been multiplied in the last 2 months. So from an international perspective, I think there are 2 points that might be critical for the development of parental rights and the right to education in the following years. One is the place that parents will have in the future of educational discussions. And second is the importance of adopting a common good perspective. I'm gonna develop really briefly these 2 axes. First, coronavirus, as I say, has shown that parents are crucial actors for the realization of the right to education. And now we have that in other documents other than the Declaration and the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, which is already something really important. But once again, they have proven their importance, and it seems that the international community have understand that for good. And I think it's time to address educational debates taking into consideration parents and their educational choices. And we, as OIDEL, we are really looking forward for the next council to include the parents and the parents' recognitions in the next resolution on the right to education. Also, the second thing is to adopt a common good perspective. I think, and I'm really looking forward that with this crisis, we have to overcome we will overcome the vertical approach children state in the educational debates, but also I think we have to overcome the individualistic approach. We should refocus on education as a common good. And what does it mean at international spheres? It means that actors keep repeating that we have to emerge from this crisis together. This does not have to mean that we have to overcome this crisis under the same bureaucratic control, but through the collaboration of all the actors. And here I encourage the homeschooling community to show to the different stakeholders, we are not part of the problem, we are part of the solution. We have developed methodologies and materials that now can be useful for the rest of the educational community, and also showing that trusting parents in the field of education eventually should benefit the whole educational community. And this is a great opportunity to show that. This crisis has helped us to realize what is important in the realization of the right to education. It is a time for optimism for a future of the right to education in which all actors should be taken into consideration, an area in which parents should become once again main figures. We have reasons to be optimistic, I think, but we have to earn this optimism. Thank you so much.